Oh. All right. Hello, friends. Welcome. This is our very first guest speaker in the Fit Club, which I'm super excited about. One, just to have this opportunity to every month share some insights from people who are probably way smarter than me or specialize in different things and really, help support this community in our wellness journey. So super excited for Kristina here to be our first guest. So we, gosh, how long have we known each other? Probably, I was trying to do the math, 2007, maybe
At least.
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least. Those years get a little blurry. That's when our kids were tiny. And so it's been a while. That's like almost 20 years, right? Yeah, math is
Yeah.
mathing. So long time. She's had a journey, I've had a journey, but they've intertwined and passed over time. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But first, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. A little bit about you, your family, your story, what you do, and then we can dive in.
Awesome. Thanks, Becky. And I am so honored. I can't believe I'm the first person. I don't think I realized that. So
You're
thank
the
you
guinea
for
pig.
having me. Awesome. Well, and I think that just backing up to what you said, having known each other, it has been awesome because I know that you have so much integrity and we share the same passion to see women be truly well. And so I really love supporting your community because I really think that's where we grow is in community with each other. And I see your community as an extension of my own and the vision that I have for us as women to continually support each other, whether that's in entrepreneurship, in business, in mothering, and just in life. And so I just want to thank you for just being an inspiration to me and for even inviting me to be here. I'm just deeply
Yeah, I'm so excited.
honored. So, to just introduce myself briefly, I am Kristina Junge for people who don't know me. And like Becky said, we met somewhere around 20 years ago in moms of preschoolers when our littles were little. And I graduated from nursing school in 2001. So, my history is that I worked at Children's Hospital, Colorado for almost 20 years. And I worked in every setting because I went to the float team and so I worked in NICU with premature babies all the way to the Pediatric Cancer Center. And then I did telephone triage for about 10 years and talked with teenagers and young adults. And so my passion for wellness, to just briefly go over, was really born out of my own adversity. And we've talked about this before, but for those who don't know my story, I had two children who ended up, my two sons who had chronic health issues. And I won't go into the details here, that's for another time. But really, after exhausting the medical system and getting pretty much nowhere or just limited by what they could do for us, I dove into learning about health and nutrition for myself to just know how I could basically heal their body with nutrition. And I'm really grateful today that my sons, who are now 17 and 15, almost 16, are 100% healed. They're thriving today by the grace of God and just the knowledge that He gave me to navigate what could be done for their physical bodies through nutrition to heal them. And
I love
so,
it.
yeah, absolutely. So, personally, the story deepens because in that time of my life, I reached a point in my late 30s where working night shifts as a nurse and just the emotional drain of caring for kids who were chronically sick. My youngest had almost died. I mean, he had a G tube, and my nights were days and my days were nights because I was working night shifts and always off with my circadian rhythm. And I just got to this place of complete burnout just in life, in my business, work, I guess in my work at the time, because I was working as a nurse and as a mom. And I had really spent so many years neglecting my own health with good reason to support my children. But I really had this framework that it was all up to me. And so I think that that piece led to me having gained 42 pounds, and I was not active. When I wasn't at work working I was sitting most of the time and I was just exhausted and I really
Mm.
could not see myself. I could not even see a way of how to get out of that at that point.
Well, and first,
So,
I just want to say
yeah,
thanks for sharing that because there are so many people that their story might be different but similar in the sense where you just feel like you're drowning and can't see a way out, and life is hard. I think sometimes it's like, oh, we'll just suck it up and keep going. Well, no, no. Sometimes it's really, really hard, and acknowledging that, like, this is a hard season, and it definitely takes a toll on you physically and emotionally. So I appreciate that. Like, share all the details because someone else is hearing a little piece of themselves in your story, and your victory is going to give them that hope. So
yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that is why I really try to be transparent with the people that I coach and just even online, because I know that a lot of us are just in a place of chronic stress, or the struggle is real. If you have whether you have children that are healthy or you just have young children, like that
mhm.
season of life is just so demanding every single day on you, mentally and physically. And so I just really feel for us as moms, because we're giving all the time, we're giving to other people.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so for me, the first transition that I had, I, I feel like I found it. You would say I found it by accident, but I really think it was divine intervention. Is that my son was dealing with a lot of behavior issues, and I found a martial arts studio, and I mainly pursued it to just get out of the house because I was so stuck at that point because I felt that I couldn't leave very easily because some days he was just not feeling well enough to go places, or I felt like I couldn't leave him with other people. So we found this martial arts studio and I dove into it for my children. But for me, it challenged me both mentally and physically. And there were two other women that, if you were to think of us back then, we were new to exercise. Like this was like, I remember the first day being there and one lady next to me, if she's the other mom, because it was two moms and me and our sons who had like ADHD, behavior issues. And they called the moms up after the end and they were like, you guys join your sons. And you're like, what? And the one mom next to me was like, I'm gonna throw up. And I remember the martial arts instructor saying, that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was how my journey kind of started, was him just inviting me. And so I think that's the other piece, is you never know the power of just inviting a friend
Oh my gosh, you
to.
were like speaking to my soul. I say this all the time. People need to be invited into what you can offer them, how you can help them, because a lot of times this is my visual, and then I'll like keep going. We're in the boat. We're in like a boat, and there's water all around it, and people are literally drowning. They're trying to keep themselves afloat. And as a coach, as a professional, as someone who can help either in, wellness or in nursing or as a teacher, whatever, you're literally reaching over the side of the boat and saying, let me help you, because they don't have the strength to get in the boat. They can't get in on their own. And so I think about this all the time. And I even shared this yesterday because, a lady I didn't know that I had reached out to help, she ended up passing away. And I was like, I don't necessarily have guilt around it, but I'm like, oh, maybe I could ask again. Maybe I could invite her in. I really feel that way. We are literally the power of invitation. And this can, transpire into different analogies in different parts of your life, but the invitation is like powerful. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so, it means so much to me now looking back that those other women joined with me, because it helped to be in community and knowing that this is hard for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone has to start somewhere. And I'm telling you, I started at like ground zero and I felt it. Like I felt it every day that week because I was so sore. But I will never forget that feeling of being that sore and thinking, I never want to start again.
Hmm.
I want to just keep going. So that was really where my mindset started to shift around this idea that maybe I could do this for myself and not just for the kids. And so to kind of fast forward, it took me 5 years to earn my black belt. And I just really feel that martial arts shifted my mindset around what I was capable of. And that was really the biggest part of the journey, because martial arts is really about showing up consistently, because there are times that you're just doing things on repeat that feel just monotonous. And we were always told that this is about perseverance. And so in my life before that, when it had to do with weight loss or it had to do with strength, it was I never gave myself time. I,
Mhm.
I I think that is one of the things that we could dive into later about some of the misconceptions, but I think that a lot of times we just don't recognize that this is a journey. And I think that's where this was the first time that I decided I can't continue to sit here being depressed and feeling stuck. I have to do something. And because I was in the community and people knew if I missed, it's like I had to keep going. So I just showed up however I was. And I think that's the big thing. If anyone could take away anything from this, is just like start showing up. Just
Yeah,
however
yeah.
you are, just like come as you are, because
And like
that
you said,
is what got
it's
me.
harder. It's gonna be harder than you think. It's gonna take longer than you think. But you just have to make that commitment to keep showing up. And it just all of a sudden, like I heard this analogy. It's, you go to the gym one day, you don't see any results. 2, 3, 10, 100 days later, all of a sudden, oh, it happened overnight. No, it didn't happen over 100 days. Like it just
Yeah.
takes more time. And I think, you're really emphasizing a lot of the things that I think this Fit Club is all about, which is community, connection, accountability, that you're not alone. Like who wants to
Mhm.
do it by themselves? The fact that you had those other ladies with you probably, I'm sure, was a huge piece of why you kept showing up, because, you know, we will often not show up for ourselves, but we'll show up for other people, right?
Yeah.
Or we don't want to not show up because we know other people are going to notice. So there's power in that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the piece that also shifted for me in that moment, which it really was like a turning moment for me, because I did not feel healthy and I definitely was not fit. I was very out of breath every time I went to anything that we did. I was constantly judging myself because I I just didn't feel that I didn't fit the model of like a person who should be in this group. And so that was a lot to overcome. But the thing that was different this time for me when I started this journey in the martial arts piece was that I wanted to feel better. It wasn't about how I looked at that point. I just wanted to feel better mentally, emotionally. I was really struggling with just that feeling of depression because of all the things that had gone on with my kids. And so my goal wasn't physical. It was
Hmm.
really like, I want to be healthy. And I think that shift was what changed so much for me, because that was a deeper why than I had ever had before.
Yeah. And I think that's important because, a lot of times we get frustrated if we're only focusing on the scale or up even a pant size or how we look in the mirror. Like, one, it can be very discouraging. The lead measure of how long it takes to see results, and that lag measure of sometimes the scale or the clothes or whatever, it takes a long time, and that's why a lot of people give up. But if you focus on the feeling, right? Well, I feel good today. I'm just going to try to feel good again tomorrow. All of a sudden, that catches up, and so I love that distinction. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going to get old. Really, we're all going to get old. We're all going to have wrinkles. We're all going to, um, lose some muscle. I mean, so it's so less about what we weigh. Do you think, like, 95-year-olds really care what they weigh? They don't care. So why does a 45-year-old care so much, right? It's how we feel, how the energy we have, the best life we have. So just random thoughts, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And
yeah,
I think, again, I just like to let people know like where I started, because
yeah.
I never in a million years would have, if you had talked to me back then when I was basically laying on the floor at the end of our the training for our martial arts, I would not have ever imagined that that person there would be inspiring women now, 8 years
Yeah.
later,
And
to
now
be
you're
healthy.
super fit, so your journey started with martial arts. How did it, translate into more of like strength, and what do you do now that, keeps you feeling, do you still do martial arts?
Yeah, I do martial arts in the form of jujitsu. So it took me 5 years to earn my black belt in Taekwondo. And I would have probably continued that journey, but that studio closed and then we ended up moving. And so we had a little bit of jujitsu training in the Taekwondo studio. So I absolutely love it because it again gets you out of your comfort zone. And that's really how my journey has progressed, is that I have learned that the biggest growth that I can experience physically and mentally is when I am willing to get uncomfortable. And so I'm always looking for ways to challenge myself to lean into discomfort. And jujitsu was that next piece because you're in a tight space, you're getting choked,
Oh gosh,
you're
yeah.
in a stressful situation where my natural state is to be very anxious, and that that piece is something that jujitsu, you have to slow your breathing, you have to be more thoughtful, and the person who wins in jujitsu isn't always the strongest person. They're the person who doesn't waste their energy. And so it has taught me more about just being calm and being grounded than
Oh
anything
my
else.
gosh,
And
that
that's
translates to life so in so
it
many
does.
ways,
It
right? Oh
does.
my gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this and like really reflect on like where am I expending my energy that I'm losing the fight, right? I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really, I pursued that. And to be honest, it's more of a hobby right now. I'm not really highly pursuing it to progress so much athletically at this point, just because it's a busy season of life. I have 4 teenagers, which I didn't really get to that piece, but I have 4 teenagers. I have a busy life. And so I go to like a women's self-defense class. I usually get to jujitsu like once or twice, well, usually twice a week is my goal. And sometimes there's a third time. And then my strength training journey, just again, it happened over COVID. So when COVID happened and all the gyms shut down, again, I got it in
Hmm.
my head that I wanted to do something hard. And so I joined like a challenge, and it was all body weight type exercises at home because we couldn't go to the gym. And I wanted to challenge myself and see like how far could I go over 8 weeks of doing a challenge when all I had was my house.
Hmm.
And I don't have a gym like you. I don't have an awesome gym like you do. So I had maybe like 20-pound dumbbells, and I had uh, just, I had like a water jug, like random items in
Yeah.
the house.
Yeah, because at that point
And
you couldn't find weights if you wanted
no,
them, right? And they
no,
were like $100 for like 5 pound weights, That
yeah.
everyone was working out at home. But I love that too because that's primarily what our Fit Club workouts are. They're low,
Mhm.
they're low equipment. And you can
Yeah.
do so much with, I don't say with so little, but you can do so much with what you have.
But you can,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And so I think that's the physical piece. My Just to kind of end the introduction, really after healing my boys and using nutrition, I pursued a course in transformative nurse coaching. And there is a holistic nurse coaching board. Well, it's the American Holistic Nurses Association, and it really focuses on holistic nursing, and coaching is one of those modalities. And so I pursued that certification in order to really support my patients to understand the power of lifestyle changes to support their health. And so really, again, I continued to work on my beliefs and thoughts because of that course. It supported me to really change really the whole trajectory of my life. And that's, again, it got me to working with women, which I didn't imagine I would because I was a pediatrics nurse my
Hmm.
whole career. But I think that the transparency around sharing my own journey, my own story, is what's drawn women to me. And I just want to support moms to know that if somebody like me could change the whole trajectory of my health, then anyone can. And
Yeah, I
that's
love that.
Yeah.
So tell us real quick where you live, your family.
Yeah.
Are you nursing now currently? And then
No,
like
I
kind of what
don't
you're
work in
doing.
the
Yeah.
hospital. Yeah, I don't work in the hospital. I just moved to Tennessee. I shouldn't say just. I mean, I was in Colorado my entire life and I moved to Tennessee. It will be 3 years in July. And we, again, just kind of did that to get out of our comfort zone and just shift our life and move us to a different part of the country and learn new things and meet new friends. And it's been a wonderful transition. Uh, and I primarily work remotely coaching women. I also support nurses to become nurse coaches and I mentor them. But primarily, my my expertise isn't necessarily in strength training because I don't have the certifications that you do. I have my personal experience, but I'm really a mindset coach. And so I really feel comfortable also coaching people with complex medical issues and autoimmune disorders and things that really kind of feel like barriers for them
Hmm.
to overcome insofar as getting started. And so that's probably where my work lies and where I thrive is helping women and people who have complex things going on.
And I think that's so important because, like I could have a certification in strength, but I have no knowledge medically, right? And so you kind of bridge that gap. You have your personal experience with strength and wellness, and then you also have your professional experience of, being in the medical field. Like there's just everybody has a gift, right? To offer. And so I love that you're here. And it's funny because when I'm like, who can I invite to talk to us about strength? It wasn't necessarily like who's necessarily you know, competing in bodybuilding. It's who's strong, right? And I remember, so this is a side note, 2020, we did a women's retreat in Colorado, a small women's retreat. And again, I was looking for who do I know who's inspirational. And so Kristina came and talked, and she literally like broke a board with, it was awesome. Such a great experience. But I'm like, you are a strong woman. So even if it's not like, tell us about muscles, right? You are the
Right.
epitome of strength. So I'm super excited
Oh,
you're here and sharing all the things.
thank you. Thank
Yay.
you.
Yay. All right. So because we did get some questions
Yeah.
from the community, and let's dive into the community questions first, and then I had some just
Oh, okay.
general ones.
Sure.
Because that way, I want to honor your time and the time of people who are listening too. But I think some of these kind of lean toward your strength of the medical
Hmm.
and the physical.
Yeah.
And so Kim is one of our like OGs. She's awesome. She's lost like 53 pounds. She's got, I think, another 50 to go before her 50th birthday. It's like all the 50s. But she had a question, is it possible to build muscle and reverse osteoporosis through weight training or strength training?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that this is an awesome question. And it's something that I wish that every woman could be aware of is that when I first learned this principle, it was actually all the way back when I worked as a pediatric nurse in oncology, and we were doing bone marrow transplants on young children. And one day I came in, and the doctors had prescribed to it was a 5 year old, I mean, somebody young to lift weights, and they were appropriate for the age. But I was like, why are they putting these young kids on like a little strength training program that they're doing every day? Aren't they too young for that? And because they were receiving chemotherapy, because they were going through bone marrow transplant, their bodies were breaking down everything that, I mean, they have everything against them, if you worse than any older woman would have, even with a hormonal imbalance, because we're putting that stress on their body. And so in order to prevent bone loss, they would have these children doing strength training exercises. And that like really hit me that this is important.
Right. This is not just
And
looking good in a bikini. This is like bone health. Yeah.
yeah, and if we look at the trajectory of somebody's longevity, hip fractures are one of the leading causes of death in women,
Hmm.
and well, in just the elderly. And the elderly is becoming younger and younger. I don't know if people are aware of that, but we're seeing the health disparity of the older population, these impacts happening in people's 50s because of the lack of movement and the lack of strength. And so 100% it's possible to build muscle even in your 70s. They have done research that even if you started in your 70s, that they will see people build muscle and that will support the I don't know that I can say that it can reverse damage that's
Hmm.
been done, but it's going to prevent further progression of osteoporosis if you're prone to it, because it's that force of the weight on the bone that tells the bone it has to be strong. So the more muscle you have to carry, the more your bones have to be strong to support that. And so it makes total sense to me. Uh, but seeing it in real time, my mom is a great example. She decided to work with me and do some of my programs with a bunch of other women, and she started back in June. And she was told she needed a double knee replacement, and she was having a lot of pain, and she started working on just walking. And so I think a lot of times women don't recognize the fact that when we carry our own body weight, that's also muscle building because we're moving weight. And so
Right.
we minimize the fact of just increasing your steps. And then also the other piece, just nourishing your body. So I think the other big piece to this that women often don't understand is in general, when women start tracking their intake, they are very, very deficient in their intake of protein. And not to get too nerdy, but
No,
protein
let's
really,
nerd out. Let's go. I'm like 100%.
I
Yeah.
mean, protein is our building blocks
Hmm.
for our body. And so we have to, protein is an essential nutrient. That's why they're called essential amino acids. We can't make them, we have to take them in. And so my mom started recognizing as she was tracking that, I mean, she's been one of those women that came from, we remember the time in the 80s when everybody was doing dieting and all these crazy diets came out.
The
There was
grapefruit
yes,
diet. Yeah, yeah.
she
Cottage
did.
cheese diet.
Yes, she
Cabbage
did
soup
every single
diet.
one. Yeah, I swear she did every single one. And so she has had that mindset of I have to eat 1,200 calories, to lose weight. And so I really challenge that thinking because it's something that I've shifted in my mindset. Because to be strong, we have to be nourished. And so she's like, this is going to be really hard for me. I'm just going to be honest with you. And she increased her calories up to what she said when she tracked. It's essentially she's eating 500 to 700 calories more. She prioritized protein from June till now. And we did a body composition scan at the beginning, and then we did it again. So we had like the real data. And she lost 14 pounds and she did not lose one bit of muscle. So she
Oh my
completely
gosh.
recomped her body,
I
eating
love
more
this.
calories.
Yeah.
And then she won like every challenge because she said, this is so crazy, but my energy is so high as a 75-year-old woman that she's like, I have just like increased my steps to like 20,000 a day. Like I can't stop moving. I'm always like walking. I want to, and just to see that joy that she had and the change. And here her doctor says you need total knee replacement. She actually couldn't lift weights because she has a 60% tear in her rotator cuff. So she did like Pilates and some body weight things along with the steps. And
Hmm.
she increased her all of her strength during that time and her energy. And so I think that's just like a real story
Oh my
about
gosh.
what
And it
you
just
can
shows
do.
it's never too late, like
No,
you're not behind. I think I sent out
no,
an email this week and it said like you're not behind. We're 10 days into the year and people are think, "Oh, it's too late. I'm behind." Everybody else started on New Year's and they've done perfect. Well, no, start now. Start at 30,
yeah,
40, 50, 65. I mean, whatever age, you're never too late to start taking care of your body. So I love that. I think it's just such
yeah,
a good testimony and the simple things, walking, prioritizing protein, taking care of your body. Like one of the coaches I know, she tells her clients, like, take care of your old lady body, right? Yeah, like you think you're so
now,
focused on this body now, but take care of what your body's
yeah.
going to be in 30 years. I'm like, I love it. Love it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
she had a pretty bad fall, uh where she like one of those falls where you hit the ice and you fly up in the air, and then she landed
Yeah, yeah,
on her hip. And it's 75 to have your doctor say, you don't have any breaks, you have the strongest bones I've ever seen.
yeah.
Tells me a lot. So I think
Because I
that's,
don't know the statistic off the top of my head, but it's something about if you break a hip after a certain age, the mortality rate within 1 year, it skyrockets
yeah,
because you
it does.
lose so much mobility, you lose connections with people, you can end up being in depression, and
Yep.
it's so bad.
It,
Like those
yeah,
hip fractures are like, I hate to say this, but they're like a death sentence
they
for a lot
are.
of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why we got to protect those bones now
Yep.
and all the way through then.
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah.
so the easy answer to your question is yes, it's entirely possible. And I think there is this belief that is a myth that after we go through menopause, we can't build muscle because we lack certain hormones, or I'm not sure what people think. I know that I was worried about that, but really all of the literature and research is showing that that's just not true.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that that conversation has, I feel like it's just at the forefront. Maybe more it's because it's more applicable to my age, my community. But I feel like at least there's so much more education out there that people can at least have hope of finding something that works for them. Back in the day, it was just like, oh, you're screwed. You're getting old. This is how it is, right?
Right.
So, all right, well, let's dive into the next question.
Sure.
Abby wanted to know about tightening the core. Like if you have any tips, especially post pregnancy. So you're a mom of four. I'm a mom of four. Lots of ladies in our community are moms. And any thoughts or tips or suggestions for really tightening up, especially that lower section.
Yeah. I think you're probably more recently experienced with this, but I think that I two things come to mind is like if this is really an issue with like a tear in the muscle where women have that separation of the abdominal muscles, then working with a physical therapist is really key because you have to be more careful when you are actively engaging the core if you have a tear. And so I think that's something that if you think that like when you do a sit up, if it looks like a triangle, and or if you have any pain, then that's something that you should probably work with a physical therapist on. I think this is one of those things that I'm just going to be completely transparent, is that is another myth. Like if we could tie this back into the question about myths, which I know we went forward with the community questions, but we can't spot check different areas of our body. And so you can strengthen your core through compound movements by probably a lot of the things that you do, like squatting and lunging, and all of the things that are full body movements are going to support a stronger core. I mean, there's specific exercises that, again, I think if you're going to target the core and you can do that safely and you don't have a tear, then definitely things like planks. But I think there's a misunderstanding that you could do like a million crunches and then you're going to just get
Right.
rid of that. And
Yeah.
that's this
And I
to
think
be.
another piece of this is also like the body acceptance piece of like you've had babies, your body is different.
Mhm.
It might like my skin and my abdomen is never going to be what it was when I was 20, 25 before I had kids. It's just different, right? So if there's a rounding of that lower abdomen, yes, there's definitely exercise we can do to strengthen it, but there's also like that acceptance of like you've had babies, like being proud of what your body can do. But yeah, I think overall nutrition, overall movement, and then any kind of strength exercise is probably the best bet. And I think sometimes I'm just going to go off tangent here. We get fixated on a certain part of our body that we will almost not appreciate the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
someone might be like, oh, I mean, me growing up, I always had big legs, right? People ask me all the time, do you play soccer? No, I just have muscular legs, right? Always wanted skinny leg. Always wanted, like back again in the 80s, 90s, being super skinny was cool. And like, it's just never gonna happen. It's just not how
Yeah.
I made. So I'd be hyper fixated on these legs, not realizing like these suckers are strong. We've had these conversations now. Like I'm
Yeah.
so glad now, like my girls' generation, they're like, the girls want the big legs. And I'm like, where was this 20 years ago?
Right.
But also I think it's like, look, taking a step back and like being in your best health, taking your care of your body the best way you can, strengthening the areas. Like if you feel like you have weak shoulders or like a weak core, you know, absolutely work on those things, but also that general appreciation for what your body can do. And, just looking at it as a whole, I guess.
Yeah, I think that is a piece that we really miss is like the reality that our bodies carried a human being for me 4 times, and some women who had twins. The fact that your skin can even stretch that much is for one, like a total amazing miracle. And the truth is like what you see on Instagram, and even for myself, I can pose in a way that makes me look different than I do. And so that lower skin is, I have stretch marks. I
Yep.
have areas of my body that are completely imperfect, and that's 100% okay. I think that if women could support to normalize that, it would be
Yeah,
a lot
totally.
easier for all of us, because most people don't have this perfect polished abdomen. Like even at my leanest, smallest weight that I ever was, I still had stretch marks and I still had loose skin. If
Yeah.
I stood a certain way, you couldn't see it, but
Right. Or you
uh
had the leggings that
yeah,
kind of tighten it all
could go
up, right?
over.
Hold it
Yeah.
all in. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Of course, yeah. Maybe that at that point you look flat, but I'm telling you, if I do a plank with no leggings, my skin is hanging,
Mine
and and
too.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm in pretty good shape. But I think that's
Yeah.
also I love that we're saying it's like saying it out loud. Our skins, our skin, our stomach, our abs, they might never look like they did before pregnancy, and that's also okay, but I think
Yeah.
it's normal, right? And I think part of the confidence piece is if that bothers you, kind of talking to Abby, maybe grab some of those leggings that hold it all together, or find ways that you can feel stronger there, but also to put yourself in your best light. If there's like clothes that don't make you feel confident, then find some that do, type of thing, because
Yeah.
it does. We want to be at our most confident self, and so if there's things that kind of make you feel less, then let's switch that up. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that this kind of transitions to a different piece, but I think that the other thing I would love for women to embrace is that aging is normal.
Yeah.
And our even being fit and strong, like you said at the beginning, we're gonna get wrinkles, we're going to have loose skin, we're going we're gonna have changes in our body that we can do our best to feel good and to take care of what we are able to, but it's okay for us to
Right.
get older.
I know, right? I mean, even thinking back to like older women that you love and admire, like my grandma was like my idol, right? She is someone who I aspire to be like. And honestly, she was heavy. And I use her story as part of my testimony because, she was one of the ones who inspired me to take care of my body at a younger age. Cause she said, I'm older, I'm heavier, and it made my life harder. Try to
Mm-hmm.
be as healthy as you can. That's the paraphrase. But I mean, I never cared that she had wrinkles. I never cared that she, had a big round belly. Like I just didn't care. The people that love you, they don't care that you have wrinkles. They don't care that you have skin in your abdomen. Like they don't care that they really, it's more about the connection and that the love that you have between people. That as we age, I think it comes out more and more. It's so much less focused on appearance. It's how we feel, it's the energy we have, it's the connections we have. So yeah, I think that's such a good perspective. Like it's totally normal. You don't have to be
Absolutely.
20 forever. And sometimes you'll see like even celebrity pictures will pop through and like, oh my gosh, look how old she is. Yeah, she's old. Like it's
She
okay.
got
It's
old,
okay. They got old.
but
Right.
she's still
Thank goodness
here.
we don't have to live in the celebrity culture personally that when I get old, people are going to talk about it. Nobody,
Yeah.
anyway, all right, sorry, I'm off track. So, all right, let's go to real quick because we were just talking about motherhood, pregnancy, training during pregnancy. Did you work out? Do you have any tips? Anna, who's in our community, she is having her second. She's actually going
Mm.
to be one of our guest speakers, I think, in February. She's a cardiac nurse practitioner, so she has expertise
Oh, wow.
as well. super awesome, but she's on her second baby. And so she was
Wow.
asking about pregnancies or something to avoid, any tips that you have after, having
Mm,
babies.
yeah. And again, I mean, I think this is where you probably have quite a bit of
But even
expertise
your
having
personal
just done it.
experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my personal experience was that I had not been training like the way, like I wish I had the opportunity like you did. I don't want to have another baby right now. So if my husband's listening to this, but I would love to see what this body felt like being pregnant. But my body when I had my first kiddos it wasn't just the physical body. I was under like an incredible amount of stress because I was working 12-hour shifts as a nurse and I didn't stop. And so I ended up on bed rest and I gained 75 pounds with my first pregnancy. And it was a lot of it was swelling and water. And so I think that the question that she has is like, what should you avoid? I think is more based on a couple of things is, where are you starting from? If your level of fitness, you can still start in pregnancy. So I started walking before I got put on bed rest. In my subsequent pregnancies, I didn't get put on bed rest and I just moved. I just tried to move every day and I tried to be active and I did it in a way that was most comfortable for me. So a lot of times I got into a pool, like in those later phases of pregnancy
Hmm.
where I felt lighter and it was lighter on my back and my joints. I wasn't in the shape that I was now, but the ones that I felt the best, and that served me the most was I did like yoga and I did a lot of stretching and a lot of things to like open up the hips when I was with my subsequent pregnancies. So I think you need to do what you're comfortable with. And as far as strength training goes, I think body weight is fine if you've already been lifting. And then I don't think there's anything that you need to change. I think you can lift like you did all the way through pregnancy and you can do what feels good for you unless you have
Yeah, and I think part of it is
contraindication.
You kind of
You
know, like,
do.
oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. You know,
You
like,
can
okay,
tell.
this feels weird. Okay, I'm not going to do
Yeah.
that.
And just
Um,
like, I mean, we don't talk about this enough, but there's certain times in your cycle. I've gotten really into this piece of like
oh yeah, tell us,
understand.
give us the deep dive
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah. Just there's certain times in your cycle that if we were listening to our bodies, we know that we have less energy, or I personally feel that my hips are looser and I'm more easy to almost injure myself at a certain phase of my cycle. I'll get like achy in my hips, and it reminds me of that last part of pregnancy when everything was kind of getting wobbly and I'd walk down the stair and be like, oh, what did I just do to my leg? And so I think that if we listen to our bodies, even in our own cycles, there's times when we need to kind of focus on restoring our body and just doing active recovery, which can be yoga, it can be body weight exercises, or going a little bit lighter and just
Hmm.
recognizing that it's just if it's just a week that I need to recover, it's just 1 week. I'm
Right.
into this idea of like, why can't we just rest when we need to rest? What is that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
We like always have to be 100 miles an hour, right? But if we really listen, like there's certain times where you just don't have it. And I almost feel like it's almost like when you're getting sick, and people often ask me like, if I'm sick, should I work out? And I always tell them like, you'll know, right?
mhm,
You'll know, like, I have a cough, I can still go for a walk. Or if you're like out of gas, body aches, you should not be working out at that
yeah,
point, right? Like, and so sometimes I think, like you said, we just need to listen to our bodies and our and give ourselves the grace that it doesn't always have to be so intense, or it doesn't always have to be it doesn't even always have to be 7 days a week or 5 days a week.
no,
I
no,
think there's flexibility there that I think we need to give ourselves some grace for
yeah.
sure.
And that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite phrases, I think, for anybody to be successful is, I mean, we're building a lifetime of health. So we want to focus on consistency over perfection because just recognize that one day is one day or one meal is one meal. It doesn't change the trajectory of your whole life because you have to even take a week off because you're sick. You're going to be better next week and you're going to get back on your plan. And so I think we derail ourselves a lot because we get so into our head about it like has to be this amount of time or it has to be this many days. And it's just honestly, it's not true.
And it's not realistic, right? Like
Mm,
we do 8 week challenges under first form, and they're 56 days, and the people that win, they've done all the math, typically are on point, usually around 46 days. Like
yeah.
they've worked out all. So 46 out of 56 days for the people who win. I mean, these are people who
Yep.
are like,
Yeah.
they're like shredded after eight. So it's just a reminder that it doesn't have to be perfect to be
Yeah.
effective. Okay, so
Exactly.
let's go into we I know we alluded a little bit about this. Any other myths or misconceptions
Mm,
that you think would be helpful to
yeah.
the group?
Well, I don't know if this is true, but I hear it all the time that women are afraid that they're going to get bulky. And
Bulky.
I don't really know what that means. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's a specific to each woman. Like, do you hear that? Do
I
people?
do. I think I hear more. It's like they'll be like, they're almost afraid, and this comes back to the CL, they're almost afraid to gain weight. So they think, well,
Okay.
if I add muscle, am I going to gain weight? Are my clothes going to be tighter? And when you and I know that a pound of muscle, is probably like this big, and a pound of fat is this big, and a pound of muscle is this big. So
Right.
even though you are building muscle, it sounds like you're actually shrinking your body in certain areas, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it comes back to people like, oh, I don't want to get bulky, so I don't want to lift heavy. I'm going to connect this. It's they'll project something that might potentially happen, and so they derail themselves now. So this is one that I've heard from
Right.
multiple people in my community. They're afraid of loose skin. They're like, well, if I lose weight, I'm going to have loose skin. And this is not calling anyone out because I'm
Right.
honest. Probably
Yeah.
10
I've
people.
heard this
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
10 people have come to me and said, I'm afraid I'm going to have loose skin if I lose weight, which it is the valid fear, right? Like, because, you sometimes you'll see people that they'll lose 100 pounds and they'll literally have
Hmm.
literally lose skin. The majority of people, if they're losing 20, 30 pounds, maybe like we talked about, we're going to have like a little extra here or there. It's not going to be as bad as you think, right? In your mind. And also taking the appearance out of it, if you had to trade loose skin for being able to live 10 years longer, which one are you going to pick? Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I think sometimes
Right.
they have this fear of something like, well, what happens if what happens if I get super fit and my partner doesn't come on board, and then we have
Mm,
marriage problems, and then we get divorced, and then I have to, they'll like
right.
almost catastrophize.
Yeah.
And in some ways, again, they're valid fears. I think that it's something to talk through with your coach or journal about, or really think well, what if, what would happen? And
Right.
then what would happen? And then what
Yeah.
would happen? But in some ways, I think sometimes it's an excuse. It's a
Hmm.
holding themselves back now because maybe they're afraid that they can't do it, or maybe they're afraid of this or that. And so whether it's the bulky, this loose skin, it's the, my lifestyle will change in some way. I might lose friends because all my friends, drink and party all the time. I think, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that as far as like future fears versus
Yeah. I
now?
think I mean I think that's the majority of what my coaching is, and I think that that's something that identity shift that you are having is a very real thing, and it's the biggest barrier to us changing is inaction. It's a fear of moving forward, and almost like paralysis of analysis is what you're talking about. It's like
Mm-hmm.
we're imagining things that truly we don't know the answer to that because we haven't gotten there yet. So
Right.
it's almost where it's easier to, what I think it is, Becky, is that it's as miserable as somebody might feel right now in this moment, they know it. It's
Mm-hmm.
known.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes more comfortable to stay in misery and to stay in disease than it is to jump into the unknown because
Oh
we
my gosh.
haven't been there
Yes.
yet.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's again where I think that's what I love to coach around is the discomfort, because again, when we lean into that piece and then maybe prove to ourselves that it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be, that's when we grow, because it suddenly we just overcame this huge barrier, and we shifted to a place where, like you said about maybe I will have to change my friends. If I was to look back at my life, it's like I can't even tell you how many open doors and how many possibilities and how much has changed for me because I shifted. And if I was still that person sitting at home on the couch depressed, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I mean, I wouldn't even live here in Tennessee because that act of bravery to move my family all the way across the US to when they're teenagers and change their schools and do
Mm-hmm.
this, that came from the changes I made in my mindset to not be afraid to take these little steps. So I think the thing I would say is just maybe start with the smallest step of action, like to help yourself recognize that I can do this. So it doesn't have to be massive change. Just start with the tiniest piece that you can commit to yourself towards your wellness, and just step into that every day. And maybe it is just 15 minutes, or maybe it is just putting on your sneakers and walking around the block, but do something instead of nothing.
Yeah. And I think, this kind of comes back to one of the other questions I'm going to ask, but it's that keeping our promises to ourselves, right? Like have building up that self-confidence, as far as like not self-confidence like, oh, I'm a great human being, but self-confidence like I have confidence that I'm going to show up for myself in the best
Mm-hmm.
way that I can. The more we do that, the easier it gets, but the more we just believe ourselves. Like if I say like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm gonna go out to dinner tonight and I'm gonna stick to my plan, whatever it is, and I do it, it's like I've given myself a win. Well, if I say I'm going to do it and then I don't do it, then I'm almost like letting myself down
Yeah.
constantly, and then we stop trusting ourselves. So even if we
Yeah.
set a goal, we don't even trust that we can do it because we let ourselves down so often. And so that comes back to the question of how do this has been a journey now that you've been on, you've maintained, you've improved, you're growing, you're helping. How do you keep that going? Because we'll also see people who will, they hit a goal and then they kind of will fall off, or it's hard to keep that trajectory or keep that forward motion. What
Mm-hmm.
are some things that you do personally, or any kind of advice that you could give? And we'll probably wrap with
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it has to do with letting go of perfection and being consistent, because to be, again, really transparent, my journey was not linear. I was one of those people that like started and stopped and started and stopped so many times. And so the that idea of self-sabotage that people say, and what you just said about self-confidence, I didn't really trust myself to be able to keep going. And that was probably the biggest fear that I had, was like letting myself down and then letting other people down, because it'd be like, oh, she failed again. She like went back and just relapsed in this area of her life. And so I can really, really, that really resonates with me when people say that they feel that. And again, that's why I constantly say, if I could do this, then you could too. But what the biggest shift for me was letting go of that all or nothing framework and recognizing that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could just be something. And so for me to continue the momentum is, again, I personally do better when I'm in community. So whether I'm coaching a group and I'm doing the goal with them, that
Mm-hmm.
keeps me going, and it keeps me accountable to, I'm accountable to the people that I coach, because I want to follow through with I never ask people to do things that I don't hold myself to do.
Amen. Yep.
And I
Yep.
see that in you. You have a lot of integrity and you practice what you preach. And so I think that's really important to me, and that just holds me accountable. I think I'm always growing. And so I also don't know everything. And so I'm willing to recognize that and know that what I think I know now might change. So I've changed a lot of the things that I do with my nutrition. And for me, what really was a game changer as far as putting it all together was getting the macros and nutrition down, because I really started the journey with strength and I grew and I learned and I felt better. But when I got the nutrition piece down and started being consistent with that, I mean, that was a game changer for me. And I can't overemphasize that enough, because a lot of women, I think, struggle, like you said, because they see the scale go up. Because when you change what you're doing, there's an adjustment period. Your
Hmm.
body's gonna you're gonna take water into your cells because and into your muscles if you haven't been eating carbs and you've been on some kind of like lower carb diet. So if you start upping your macros and you get more energy, you're gonna have this shift where everything's moving around. And so I think that's the other piece, is just not looking at the scale. Like, just like, don't use that as your measure of success. People, like you said, are so stuck on the scale. And so I had to get that out of my head and focus more on, like, I want to be strong. I want
Hmm.
to, and I'm going to get there the way I need to get there. And that's probably a whole nother talk, is the difference between building and actually cutting, which what people are doing with you is what women actually want, is they want to have a lean physique. And so they're wanting to actually like lose body fat. I'm in the second half of my journey where, again, I'm getting uncomfortable again, which I'm intentionally putting on weight and I'm watching the
Right.
scale go up. And that's kind of my new place of getting uncomfortable. And so I guess that's the other piece, is like your journey today is not what it looks like tomorrow. And so I keep the momentum by always having like a new goal and a new thing that I'm going to step into to kind of challenge myself. And so where I was, 8 years ago, I'm in a different place now. And I just keep kind of changing where I'm going and what I want to accomplish. So I think just know that like you're never done.
Hmm.
We're always growing. And so I think as long as we have that outlook, then we don't limit ourselves, because we can always be just a little bit better tomorrow.
I love it. I love it. All right. So tell our everyone where they can connect with you, where they can find you. I mean, I could share your
Yeah.
socials, or, your website,
Yeah.
or even your email, whatever you want, if people want to hear more from you. But this has been so awesome. Thank you so much. It's like
Yeah.
better than I
It's
could have ever hoped. And of course, because you're amazing. But
Oh, well, thank you. I feel
yeah.
the same way about you. And yeah, my most recent thing that I'm working on is really bringing this to our local community through Live Your Wellness. And that is here in Alcoa, Tennessee. And so I actually can see clients there, and I'm pairing with a nutrition coach to like bring the whole thing so that
I
I
love
can
it.
support people around mindset, and then she can work on their body composition goals that they have. So we're working together, and that's been awesome. So I'll have you link that. But I think it's liveyourwellness.com. It might be .org. So I'll send it to
Yeah,
you
no, I'll
because
make sure we get the right
It's
I'll make
new
sure we
for
get the right data
me.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, my email is info dot coach Kristina at gmail.com if people just want to email me directly. And then I'll share my Facebook, and my Instagram is at nurse coach
Yay.
Kristina. So
Yay.
yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so very much. This was
yeah.
so helpful. Of course, I love one catching up, but I just think the more, face to face, heart to heart, and also shoulder to shoulder doing the work that we can do, it's just I'm better for it, you're better for it, the people around us are better for it. And it's just, we're gonna help this world be healthier.
Yeah.
Can we help everyone? Sure, right? We'll do our best. So
Well, yes. And I think that's the thing too, is people just underestimate what they can do. Is we can all help ourselves. And so I
yeah.
think that's something that I just really love, because I think we're both working to empower women to take control over what we can control. And so I'm excited to see your community grow and just to see everybody getting stronger and healthier. So
I
thanks
love
for
it. I
letting
love
me
it.
be
And
part
then
of
and then,
it.
the one thing I gotta end with, and then I'll stop recording, is that the ripple effect, which we didn't even talk about, but how
Mm,
you change your life and it changes your family, it changes the
yes.
community, and then, then your family is inspired. It's just, it starts with us, right? But the impact is so much greater than that. And I just want to thank you for the impact that you're having.
Thank you. Thank you so much.